Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity and we help people living with terminal illnesses or dealing with bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. In each episode, I ask my guests to share with us a song they've written themselves and talk a little bit about how they wrote it. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them to share a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features David Moon, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, today I'm here with David Moon. Thanks for joining me, David.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Nice to meet you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you. This is the Swan Song Project Podcast. For anyone who's new to the show, each week I have a different songwriter on and I ask them to share with us one of their songs. We have a conversation about how they wrote it. I ask them to share with us a songwriting tip, and I also ask them to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. So today David's with us, and David's here in kind of two hats in a way, so it's kind of an interesting way we came to be talking here. I'll let you tell the story. In fact, David, it's probably better coming from your mouth than mine. Do you want to give us a little bit about your background and where you are?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. Thanks, Ben. So I work at Full Circle Funerals in the Harrogate service, and I've been here since January, so coming up to 4 months. Still kind of finding my feet, but it's all going really well and it's really positive. For me, it's a bit of an unusual career shift because I used to be a teacher. I was a high school music teacher for 10 years. And we moved back to Harrogate. I grew up in Harrogate, moved back here last year. And I'd always had it on my mind that I'd wanted to break away from teaching and try something new. And the move and a few changes in my circumstances just formed a bit of a catalyst, I suppose, and just got me out of teaching and got me thinking about what I might like to do. And yeah, it's a funny story really. My sister was walking by the Harrogate service and there was a sign up saying, position available, please email David and to express your interest. And I was looking for a few other jobs at the time, and it struck me as quite unusual. My sister and I kind of laughed it off a little bit initially, just thinking, wouldn't that be unusual? And I went on the website and had a look at it, find out a bit more about the industry. And actually unusually there's quite a lot of crossover between teaching and funeral directing. And it seems really odd to say, but at the core of it, one thing that kept me doing the teaching for so long is, watching kids grow, developing a connection, and knowing that you've kind of played, even if it's a small part, in shaping them as a person and helping them to sort of take the next step in their journey. And for me, funeral directing also gave me the opportunity to have a positive impact on people, to support them when they're having a difficult time, and to be able to know that that's ultimately feeding into my reward system, because I knew that's I didn't want to just have a job that was 9 to 5, a bit humdrum, and sort of stuck at an office desk. I needed something that was quite practical and just enabled me to connect with people. So I guess that's kind of what's brought me to Full Circle. Obviously, I have a musical background, and they've been really accommodating of that, actually. From the moment that I had the interview with Sarah and we got talking about some of the things I've been doing in the past, they've very much seen it as something to celebrate within the job here. And a lot of the work that we do is about connecting with the community. So we do have some small outreach projects, and a lot of the angle of Full Circle and the philosophy behind it is supporting the well-being of every bereaved individual. And so within well-being, you've got lots of angles, but music is one of them. So we're currently looking at a means to connect the community and hopefully trying to use some of my strengths to do that. So we're doing a few small projects at the moment. So a quick shout out to May 15th at 1:00. So there'll be a Zoom performance. I did a bit of research on music and its impact to well-being, and there's a few articles out there about the link with dementia, and it's still emerging research, but music therapy does have a profound impact on patients, particularly dementia patients, and given the way in which we can remember information, often you can listen to a piece of music and be taken back to a significant point in time. For example, that might be your first dance at your wedding, or it could be a funeral, but it could be some other celebration event, or just something that took you back to a special moment in your life. And through the research, I realized that it's not just the music, it's other sensory information, but music can act as a trigger for the memory. So in that spirit, the event's called Golden Oldies, and for about 45 minutes, I'm going to be bringing back some old tunes and playing them on the guitar. So I predominantly just play as a soloist on the acoustic guitar. So I do a playing style called fingerstyle, and that kind of weaves in the melody, harmony, and bass, and it just gives a nice flavour of the song. So I've had some requests for things like Blue Moon and Fly Me to the Moon. Lots of songs with moon in, but yeah, it's been fun to learn them, and I look forward to doing it. So
yeah, it's brilliant. For any listeners right up to Full Circle Funerals, there's funeral directors that Swan Song's done some work with in the past. Sorry, that's my phone keeps going off. Just put that out of the way. And yes, we've done some work together in the past with various Full Circle sites, and I want to give a quick plug as well. Sarah, the director who's mentioned there, has a book out which has got Funerals Your Way, and this year she's donating the profits of it to the Swan Song Project. So if anybody listening is interested in finding out some more about funerals, but also supporting the project, you can find that book on Amazon. It's called Funerals Your Way by Sarah Jones, isn't it? But yeah, that's great. It's an interesting story. Funeral director is not something that you kind of think of as a job that you get into in that way. I don't know why it always seems like one of those jobs that, I don't know, it doesn't seem like something you see an advert for and apply for. I guess because it's kind of dealing with quite intense stuff in a way. How have you found that part of it? I mean, obviously it's a funny time to start at the start of a lockdown, starting in January. But how have you found that part of it? I think you have to work with a lot of people in difficult times.
I think it's safe to say that I was a bit cautious at the start. Within my experience, I've supported families and children and worked with them. But and bereavement takes many forms, and it can be really harrowing at the beginning. And I was nervous that when faced with that, I wouldn't know what the right thing to do or say was, because it's just something that, I'm fortunate in the sense that, there's not been much bereavement in my family up until, fairly recently. And I found that I wasn't sure if I had the right tools in that sense. I knew that, all my family are, almost all of them are nurses. They work in healthcare. I've been surrounded by that growing up, and it felt like sort of the practical nature of the job wasn't something that was going to be phasing me or sort of getting in the way. So I thought that the initial meeting of the family and that, that seeing that trauma and how best to help them navigate it, or just provide a space that's safe for them, that's just something that was kind of burrowing in the back of my mind as something that I knew that I would be wanting to work through as I got started in the job.
Yeah. I guess there's probably like sorts of similarities with dealing with difficult things as a teacher as well, and these difficult situations. I'm glad it's going well for you, and it's brilliant that they're so open to using your musical skills as well as part of it. Like it's always nice to hear when more music's involved in anything. It's always a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I got into teaching at first, it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, I got a lot out of it. But at the beginning, it was I was a guitar tutor beforehand, and I was performing, and it felt like a convenient shift as I was raising a young family, and it felt stable and secure. And then it kind of grew on me, and so I knew that any future job that I needed, it needed to satisfy me in that same way. But I also would have felt a little bit lost if I'd done something that didn't enable me to be musical in any way, because that would just be really denying myself of something that I get a lot of reward out of, and just kind of confining it to the odd hour on a weekend felt like it would be a waste. So I didn't want to be trapped. So it's worked out really well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Good stuff. So let's move into the regular sections of the podcast now. So first off, I always ask my guests to share with us a song that they've written, and we're going to have a chat about that. So I'll ask you to introduce the song of yours for us, please, David.
Yep, so this song is called Skimming Stones. It's from the album Out of the Blue, and I've been involved in the writing of most of the album in collaboration with a gentleman called Mike Greenway, who's a long friend and musician and producer.
Far can you see into the future? Do your visions cloud perception of reality? Don't be a dreamer. Keep your feet on the ground with a sound of clarity. Take it apart, back to the start. Don't try to find what's not even there. Look back, hold on, keep moving on. Stronger than a strength to which you're bound. I'm skimming stones across the lake, counting the bounces, the lucky breaks, watching the waves, the waters wake. Cause and effect spread by the choices we make. How long can you wait? I'm itching to find the peace of mind and state. Patience is a virtue, I don't think I heard you shouting so long, and all through the night. And I had an appetite to start a fight with what I cannot share. Hold on to the distance, stop and stare. You're still only halfway there. I'm skimming stones across the lake, counting the bounces, the lucky breaks, watching the waves, the waters wake. Cause and effect spread by the choices that we make. Across the lake, counting the bounces, the lucky breaks, watching the waves, the waters wake, cause and effect spread by the choices we make. Oh, by the choices we make. By the choices we made.
Okay, brilliant. So that was Skimming Stones by David Moon. Yeah, it's a cool song. So what can you tell us about writing it? When did you write it? And what was the, a few questions come at you once, but what was the collaborative process like? Something I'm always interested in when people write with other people, how that kind of goes about.
Yeah, sure. So, well, the collaborative process was great. I was living in Chessington at the time, down south, and Mike lived in Surbiton, so I'd occasionally just go and visit him. And he had a really lovely, like, 4-story townhouse, and he had a studio on the first floor, and we just sort of rock up. He'd make a cup of tea, we'd have a bite to eat, have a bit of a chat, and then we'd just get into the studio and just flesh out some ideas. And some of the songs we wrote from scratch together, but more often than not, I'd come at him with something, and then we would sort of grow it together. And depending, I mean, each song on the album turned out just kind of formed slightly differently. So we might have just been scratching our heads for 2 hours over lyrics, but then one of the other days it was I had the lyrics and he had something, you know, noodly to go in the background with it, or, you know, developed from a riff somewhere. So this song predominantly, lyrically is pretty much solely my input, and Mike helped me to kind of structure parts of it out, and ultimately he's the person responsible for the polished finish on the track itself. So the song was born. So it didn't have like a birthday, so to speak. It came together in lots of pieces. When I was younger, I used to do quite a lot of traveling, and I'd have a little lyric book. And I would just, when the moment struck me, I'd just start writing stuff down. And I was on a train, I think at the time. It was just before I was going to university, so I was thinking about my future and going on all these little journeys went to Reading, Coventry, London, Dartington, just looking at these different places, what they have to offer. And it sparked some creativity in thinking, what's my future going to be like, and just kind of playing with those thoughts. So I guess the lyrics tell a bit of a story of a bit of a struggle, a personal struggle of mine, which was what is possible in my life. What do I think I can do, or to stretch it, what would be my hopes and dreams for myself. And then that's kind of tempered with what's realistic. So I think we'd all agree that, you know, music's a wonderful thing to get into, but, you know, compared to other careers, you could say that it's got more of a sort of, it can be a more tenuous existence financially. And I had reservations about how much did I want to go all in with it and find myself with a degree I wasn't using at the end, and a bit lost as to what I was going to do, and having a very kind of defined skill set that might not always map over to sort of standard career work. So it's kind of a narrative about how I really want to do it, but then it's just, you know, hold on, have you really thought about this? So that's kind of like part of the sort of the verse content. And then the other part came from so my parents split up when I was a bit younger, and I'd see my dad on the weekends, and I'd see my gran as well, and he would take me to Wetherby, and under the viaduct at the river wharf, there's a little place where you can feed the ducks, and there's just like little bits and bobs where you can walk around. And there used to be a little spot where I'd go and I'd just go and skim the stones. And it was all very innocent at the time. And, you know, I loved throwing things as a kid. And so it just felt like it was quite a satisfying thing to do. So that lyric was not part of the main verses. It was just somewhere else in the book, but I just nabbed it because for me, it kind of served as quite a nice metaphor, I guess, for how some of the decisions that we make in life kind of stay with us, and the impact on the people around us, kind of like a sort of ripple effect. And it felt like a nice way of bringing the thoughts together in that kind of chorus defining moment. So that's kind of how it was put together. So it was imagined in different pieces.
That's really interesting. How old did you say were you when you, was it before you went to uni, you say?
Yeah, so I took a couple of gap years, so I was probably about 20.
Sounds like you were very kind of rationally minded and reasonably minded for a 20-year-old. When I was 20, I probably wasn't thinking as clearly as that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe the gap years helped me out a bit because I had to get a normal job and pay rent, and and proof of concept that I could support myself and then just get along really. But they were quite useful gap years because it made me realise that I did want to do it. If this is going to be the life without kind of really trying to do something meaningful, then I didn't really want it. So it felt like it was a song about just kind of weighing it up. But I did knew in my heart at the time that I was ready to take a leap of faith, and growing up in a little place like Harrogate, moving to southwest London without any family around, it was a big deal in my head. And so there was lots of emotion around it, and hence the scribbling in the lyric book and trying to get some of it out. So that's kind of the broad side of things. And then later I turned up at Mike's house with bits of chord work, and often what happens is I don't necessarily have a full structure of a song. I've just got a bit that I like, and then we just kind of like work on developing it together. So the song was, part of my degree was focused on, it was a music performance degree focusing on extending techniques within the guitar. So it was, the album is a concept of kind of a vessel for exploring those. And I was dabbling a lot of the time with altered tunings. So I'd regularly use this one's in a drop D tuning, and it does add to the sound. But for me, messing around with the guitar and kind of changing the tuning means all the chords are different and the shapes are different. So it's purpose. I do it to purposefully confuse myself, because it's very easy to just think as a kind of music theorist and go, well, I'm going to do these chords, and then I'm going to use that seventh chord to then, modulate to that key in that chorus, and all of a sudden you end up with a really formulaic outcome. So it was purposeful to allow me to get back to just being creative. And so the verse is only 2 chords, but it goes from an A to it, and it ends up going to a D6 chord, which I just wouldn't have picked otherwise if it weren't for just sort of messing around and not thinking too much about where the chord's coming from or going to. And that's kind of it. I mean, like the song comes back to the main key. That's the verse key at the end. So the bridge kind of goes on a bit of a wander, and there's a couple of surprise chords in there. Production wise, I think Mike did some real good justice with that. Just some nice little bits of word painting where he's got the delay effect on the guitar. There's a real there's a really heavy reverb on the kit, and there's a bit of call and response with the backing vocals, and that just, again, that's all the skimming stones, the bouncing, and they're helping to sort of visualize that musically. So that's the song.
Yeah, that's cool. In terms of the the album itself. So was that kind of a project that you decided on, or was it like out of a selection of songs that you had, or was there any kind of like? So you mentioned about the extending the guitar techniques. Was that something you were aiming for? So like an album where I'm gonna try these different guitar techniques throughout, or was I guess, were your other songs written in a similar kind of theme? Like, were you kind of often thinking about those kind of, personal dilemmas and questions and things like that? Was that a kind of common theme amongst your songs, or?
No, it wasn't. So I had a bunch of lyrics, and some of them felt like they got legs to do something with. So I worked with Mike on a couple of tracks, and we worked really well together. We wrote a few pieces, and it kind of went from an EP to kind of, well, let's do the album, and it kind of just grew from there. Some of the lyrics were his, and then I, worked a bit more instrumentally. So it was a real collaboration. From the perspective of where I was at with my music and my degree, it made it interesting for me to say, okay, well, I'm working with. So I was doing techniques around body percussion and harmonics, and other forms of tapping and things like that. So it felt like it would be really cool and different to try and work this into the songwriting itself. And it felt like at the time, I mean, time has really moved on, but at the time it felt quite fresh, and there wasn't really anyone else out there that was offering that. So I felt like I was kind of onto something, and it was a good feeling. And that's kind of the lyrical content of the album moves around quite a bit, but it is generally on the narrative of exploring my personal emotions, and some of them have been through relationships, and types of loss within that, and then just general reflection and contemplation.
Yeah, that sounds good. And was it a conscious thing, like what you said about the theme for Skimming Stones and those decisions that you were making at the time? Was it like that was just something that was on your mind a lot, and then you thought, well, I'll write a song about this because this will be an interesting song? Or was it a bit like it's on my mind, so I'm going to write about it to see how that works out?
So I'm not a career songwriter, and so I don't just go and sort of find my special room and all of a sudden lyrics flow. It's my kind of own music therapy. If I'm working through a problem or a dilemma, or I've got something that's heavy on my mind, the lyrics, writing lyrics is a way of me getting it out and processing it. And the experience of creating music from it is, that kind of helps me. I guess it's my own sort of music therapy, but it's also nice at the end because you've made something, and maybe you're past whatever event you were thinking about or whatever's kind of got you stuck, and then there's something that you've made at the end, and you can share it, and it can mean different things to different people. So I can't see why more people aren't using it as a way of kind of pushing through any difficulties that they've got.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. I think it's often an overlooked. Well, it needs a PR job. I think that benefit of songwriting and of creative practice in general. I think a lot of people think of it as it's a means to an end. Like you do it to have something to sell or to perform or something like that, rather than thinking of it for that own personal therapeutic benefits. And it's something that comes up a lot with Swan Song, is that people are writing the songs and they might think, oh, I'm writing this song to leave for my kids or something like that. But then the process of doing it, you can have all these reflections and the sense of pride you have in having something permanent. And it's always nice to share that with people. But even if someone does that in their room by themselves and finds some benefit in reflecting on whatever it is they're thinking about and putting into a song.
And any songwriting I've done has never been for any perceived commercial value. It's just a personal expression, and which is why and I've never I've never aspired to kind of write sort of cookie cutter kind of songs. And there are people that do that and do it very well, and I'm sure they enjoy it. But that would kind of go against the point of why you're doing it in the first place, I think.
Yeah. There's a great quote by someone, I can't remember what it was now. I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to do a really bad job of it. But there's someone who's a great songwriter and said they write 3 types of songs. Ones were to make money, one was something else, and then one was for themselves. So they'd write songs that were just for their own purposes because they enjoyed writing them, and write the ones what like this is the song what it's going to sell. And I can't remember what the other one was. It might be songs to perform or something like that. But I've got a feeling it was something. Yeah, it might have been that. It might have been songs that I know will be good fun to play live, ones that are going to be good commercially, and ones that are just for my own personal benefit. Yeah, interesting stuff. Let's move into section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share a songwriting tip with us. So what would your tip be first, David?
Brilliant. Yeah, so I had a little think about this. I'm going to use my guitar, if that helps. Well, it certainly will help me. Hopefully it'll help anyone else that's listening. So often I work with composing with students at school, and some of them would be writing songs, and we'd be talking, brainstorming through ideas. So it might be that a lot of your audience maybe are aware of this, or it might be brand new. But in any case, hopefully it will be something to somebody. So we're going to look at not lyrics or melody, but actually the backing stuff, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So the chords and the harmony and the things that make up all the background sound. And it's kind of from the perspective that, let's say, for example, that maybe you've got a simple chord progression. So you've got 3 or 4 chords, and you kind of know how they fit, and you're strumming them along on a guitar or something, and you're looking to do something a bit more interesting. So you're looking to just explore some opportunities. So, this is my guitar. And for the purposes of this example, let's say that you've picked the following 4 chords. So let's say that you've got a C chord, an A minor, an F, and a G. So you could happily strum them, a bar on each one, and sing along, and I'm sure you'd create something really nice. But you might be left with a feeling that what you're doing is maybe a bit overplayed, something that's been done a lot, and you might find that it doesn't spark much creativity, or maybe you've already written loads of songs like that and you want to do something different. So one thing you can do is, rather than just play, as I've done, the chords in what's called root position. So what that means is, well, for the C chord, which would have a C, E, and a G, the C is always at the bottom. And then the same for all the other chords. The A minor would have the A at the bottom, the F would have the F, the F major would have the F at the bottom, and so on. So what you can do is you can use what's called a chord inversion. So you can take the notes of the chord, and rather than just playing the C at the bottom of the chord, you can choose one of the other 2 notes that belong to the chord. So a C chord has a C, E, and a G. So instead of the C at the bottom, you could choose to play the E at the bottom or the G at the bottom. So that would look a bit like this. So a C chord would just have, you just include the bottom E string, and then a C with a G at the bottom. So they don't really sound like big deals on their own, but as part of a progression, if you kind of mess around with the different chords that you've got, so you could find an opportunity to create, I don't know if you got that siren, sorry about that. You can find a chance to create bass lines that move, rather than chugging away between big leaps of notes in the chord. You can find something that's a bit smoother. So, for example, that could be a descending bass line. Something similar to that. You can accommodate that within your chord. So you'd have a C, and then you'd have a C with a B. So that's one of the possible inversions. You'd have A minor, and then you'd use the descending note, the A minor. Technically, it's an A minor 7 because it's the G, and then you've got just a standard F, and then the rest look like they're in more or less root position. So that would go, could sound a bit like this. You could try in other keys. So so it's just some opportunity to try and do something a little bit different. There's a little bit of theory that you'd need to know. So you need to know what chords can I use in the key that I've chosen, and then what are my possible chord inversions, and then you'd have to kind of sketch out what direction your bass line wants to go in, and you'd have to kind of work the chords around to follow it. Lots of mainstream pop artists use this. I think that's Ed Sheeran, Thinking Out Loud, and that uses the C, and then it's got the C with the first inversion, so C with the E in the bass, and the F and the G.
The one you were playing earlier as well. I was just playing that earlier with. Have you ever seen The Rain, Creedence Clearwater Revival? That's got that exact same sending bass line there.
Yeah. I was going through this example this morning.
Very popular. It's very kind of. It's just such a good sound to it, isn't it? Kind of.
And it's used a lot in. I mean, they used it 100 years ago with, like, Pachelbel's Canon has got a similar sort of descending bass. You've got Jack Johnson, Better Together. But yeah, it just throws up some options. And if you haven't already, if you're stuck in major and minor chords, try putting some sevenths in. You've got to be careful about what kind of seventh you use, and I don't think I'll go too much into that. One thing I found is that you can get away with a lot of minor sevenths without making it too jazzy. But your major sevenths, you kind of end up with something that's a bit too. It just feels a little bit forced on the jazz front. So it kind of want to do, but exploring, getting yourself away from just major and minor chords, try some inversions, and if you feel able to, aim to decorate your chords with some sevenths or even ninths. But yeah,
that's great, David. Thanks. It's really good advice. I think it's kind of a common thing as well that people who are new to music don't realize how similar so many songs are. Using a similar kind of few chords, and so I remember hitting that realization myself of like, well, I need to keep learning new things to make my songs more interesting, and you keep trying to, but the more it's not like the more chords you add, the better it's going to sound. So having those little tricks of, like, if I'm using the same 4 chords I might use in this song, I'll use some of these little tricks to just make it that little bit different.
That can be as simple as when you get to your second and third verse, you can actually use that as a means of pushing forward a bit of development and adding something different, so that you've got a new lyric and your contour of your melody is broadly the same with some decoration, but you also have something in the accompaniment that drives the music forward. And you can do that with the chords you choose and what you do with them.
Yeah, that's brilliant, David. Thank you. So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. So I'll ask you to introduce your choice for this one first, please, David.
So this one is known by a few names. It's most commonly known as this being called the South Wind. It's a traditional Irish tune. The version that you'll see me play is by a guitarist called Al Petaway, who's extremely talented and great at arranging traditional music. And the version that I've got, the published performance, is called The West Wind, but it's known by a few names.
Okay, but that was The West Wind. So yeah, so it's a traditional Irish one, particular arrangement that you've come across. Why did you choose that piece for it? It's a lovely piece. My background's in Irish music, so anything those kind of stuff kind of really pulls my heartstrings. But it's a beautiful.
Nice. Piece. Well, yeah. Feel free to fill me in as well, because it's not necessarily my background, but I do on a sort of personal level with sort of developing repertoire. I come across all sorts of things, but I really like guitar traditional arrangements, and so I had a kind of a vested interest in it initially. But for me, I guess its impact on bereavement is really on a personal level, because my stepfather died about 8 years ago, and at my mum asked if I would play something at the funeral, and I played that. So it's something I kind of had up my sleeve, and I thought that seems to fit really well. So in the first instance, it was a bit of a performance of convenience. I'm okay saying that now, and it's, because I think differently now, but it's essentially, it resonated with me on a few reasons. Firstly, if you are ever involved in planning a funeral and or just delivering something in a funeral, the sheer act of you being involved in it makes it more of an event in your head. I can think back to that moment, and I can think back to when I played. I can think back to the space, to the way I spoke to my family afterwards. And so the biggest gift I've got is that I've got this. I've got a really sort of deep memory of the experience, and I would encourage anyone that feels able to, that has suffered any kind of bereavement, has the opportunity to become involved in a funeral, and specifically from my experience musically, it does a lot for you, but it also gives you something as well, something to take away for a long time. So my stepfather was a fiddle player, and he played the mandolin, and he had a ceilidh band, and they performed all over the place, and he was brilliant. He was a real he was a great flat picker on the mandolin. I couldn't do half the things that he does, and he grew up with a lot of the traditional music, and so I knew that he would know it, and I knew that other people would be able to acknowledge that. So it felt like it worked, and I like the way that, from what I've learned about it, what I really like is that whilst I had learned the piece away from any lyrical content associated with it, so when I discovered a little bit about what the lyrics were for the piece, it was really warming for me to know that there's quite a good link with bereavement, and that on some level, perhaps musically, that was speaking to me. So I'm going to read out one of the verses, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
So it says, "South wind of the gentle rain, you banish winter weather, bring salmon to the pool again, the bees among the heather. If northward now you mean to blow, as you rustle soft above me, Godspeed be with you as you go, and a kiss for those that love me." So I really like that. That's quite powerful to me. And my stepfather was a really kind and gentle man. He was only in my life for a short period of time. I think it was with my mum for about 5-6 years, but I guess you could say, kind of like the south wind, he brought like a renewed happiness amongst the family and my mum and the rest of the family. And we were really lucky to have him in our lives. So for me, it's, in terms of the piece and the choice, it's really my personal interpretation and the impact that it's had for me, and the connections I've kind of made along the way with my own experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful, David. Thanks for sharing. I love it when, like, that's what I always think the aim with the music should be, that it tells the lyrics, it communicates the same message as the lyrics, but without the words. So it's kind of great that it kind of did that for you in that sense there.
Yeah. I found it really, I found it a really pleasant surprise that only later on did I find out that lyrically it makes a lot of connections, and yeah, it was lovely to know that musically it spoke to me as well. So
yeah, it's a beautiful piece. How did you find the performing at the funeral? Like, just like, you know, on an emotional level. So we talked a little bit about obviously the power of the event and things. Was it? And had you done a lot of performance beforehand? Like, you were kind of seasoned at performing?
Yeah, so I'm quite used to performing. I'm a bit of a nervous creature when it comes to performing anyway. So for me, the piece sits really comfortably within my ability spectrum. So I felt that against the pressures of the situation and my own internal kind of feelings at the time, would still be able to hold up to the piece and the performance. So I would, I guess if I was given any advice, it would be just make sure that it's quite a bulletproof piece of music that you're going to perform. You wouldn't want anything too risky, because, you know, a couple of wobbles here and there, and that might be curtains for the performance. But yeah, so I found that was okay, and but that's certainly a consideration, and for anyone that might want to musically be involved, is just make sure that you're comfortable with what you're doing, and that you've thought about anything in the music that might kind of get in the way or trip you up, and you've got some good anchor points to help you out in those moments.
That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of want to showcase something what might be like right at the edge of and I always said it with performance, when that me, and whenever I'd perform, my first song or two would always went to songs that were in that catalogue where, like, you know you can do the song on your worst day, you're not going to make any mistakes, and then only when you kind of settled in, you're like, right, this is a song where I need to be on my game for. So with something like a funeral where your emotions are likely to be higher than usual, making sure there's something that even with different outside stresses, you should be able to cover it, rather than need to be 100% focused on this.
Yeah, and a lot of that is, I guess it's experience. You know, a lot of people that have been performing for long enough will know where they've kind of stuck their neck out in a few pieces and maybe got burned, and had to kind of like claw it back a little bit and find what is sensible to offer as a performance. And I guess for someone, or perhaps a family that you might support, they might not necessarily have that foresight, and so I guess, you know, some delicate guidance through that would be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, brilliant, David. Thanks a lot for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's been lovely.
Yeah, really nice. And can people find the album online if they want to check out?
Yeah, so it's been on Spotify for a while, so it's on YouTube, and you can find me on Facebook if you want as well. What I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months, as I left teaching, got back into playing, I've just been putting up a portfolio of bits and pieces and arrangements. So that's David Moon Acoustic. And that's on Instagram as well. So you're welcome to find me if you like, and connect.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll put all the links in the description as well. I'll put the links to Full Circle as well if people want to get in touch about any of the things you're going on there with the new program. Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, David. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back on the episode soon.
Brilliant. Take care.